The Atlantic wind howled across the desolate dunes of Provincetown, Massachusetts, on that fateful July morning in 1974. What began as an ordinary day for beachgoers quickly turned into a nightmare when two visitors stumbled upon a scene straight out of a horror movie. There, sprawled face down on a colorful beach blanket, lay the lifeless body of a woman, her auburn hair matted with sand, her skin baked by the relentless summer sun. But this was no accidental death. The brutality of the crime scene made that immediately clear. Her hands and right forearm had been surgically removed. Her head hung precariously from her neck, nearly decapitated. One side of her skull was caved in, the fatal blow that had ended her life. Strangest of all, her toenails were freshly painted pink, a macabre contrast to the violence that had been inflicted upon her. The medical examiner would later determine that she had been killed by the devastating head trauma, likely while she slept, or was otherwise unaware of her attacker. There were no defensive wounds, no signs of a struggle. This suggested she had known her killer, trusted them enough to let her guard down. Even more disturbing was the evidence of sexual assault, which appeared to have occurred after death. The killer had taken grotesque steps to make identification nearly impossible, removing several teeth, severing the hands, and leaving the body to rot in the elements. Who was this woman, and who would go to such lengths to ensure she remained nameless? For nearly 50 years, the case grew colder, the victim known only as the Lady of the Dunes. Despite extensive media coverage and numerous theories, including possible connections to organized crime or even notorious serial killers like the Boston Strangler, her identity remained a mystery. That is until 2018, when a man named Richard Hanchett embarked on a journey to find the birth mother he had never known. Hanchett had been adopted as an infant in 1958. The few details he had about his biological mother painted her as a kind, beautiful woman named Ruth Marie Terry from Tennessee. With hope in his heart, he submitted his DNA to Ancestry.com, never imagining the dark truth that awaited him. When the results came back, he tracked down relatives, only to learn that Ruth had vanished without a trace decades earlier. No one knew what had happened to her. She had simply disappeared, leaving behind a life abruptly cut short. For years, Hanchett lived with the agony of not knowing. Then, in October 2022, the FBI delivered the answer he had been searching for, one that also solved one of America's most enduring cold cases. Through advanced forensic genealogy, the Lady of the Dunes was finally identified as Ruth Marie Terry. The revelation sent shockwaves through the true crime world. After nearly half a century, the nameless victim had her identity restored. But with that answer came a new, more chilling question. Who had murdered Ruth Terry, and why? As investigators dug deeper, a disturbing suspect emerged. A man with a history of violence and a trail of destruction in his wake. His name was Guy Rockwell Moldaven, and he had married Ruth just months before her gruesome death. Moldaven was no ordinary man. His past was littered with red flags. In 1960, he had been arrested in connection with the disappearance of his former wife and their young daughter. Their remains were later found hidden beneath the floorboards of their Seattle home. Shockingly, Moldaven had walked free in 1962 after receiving a suspended sentence. How had a man linked to such a heinous crime been allowed back on the streets? The more authorities looked into Moldaven, the more sinister the connections became. Witnesses described him as charming yet manipulative, a man who left chaos in his wake. Some even speculated he may have been involved in other unsolved murders. Had Ruth Terry been his next victim? The timeline was damning. Their brief marriage, her sudden disappearance, and the fact that her body was found just months after they were believed to have wed. But with Moldavan himself long dead, the full truth may never be known. The identification of Ruth Terry brought a measure of closure to her family, particularly to Richard Hanchett, who had spent a lifetime wondering about the mother he never knew. Yet the case remains open, the killer's identity still officially a mystery. Was Moldavan truly responsible? Or was there another predator lurking in the shadows of Ruth's life? The dunes of Provincetown hold their secrets tightly. The ocean breeze still whispers through the tall grass, as if carrying the echoes of Ruth's final moments. For decades, she was a ghost, a Jane Doe whose story was lost to time. Now, she has her name back, but justice remains elusive. The Lady of the Dunes is no longer anonymous, but her killer, whether Moldavan or someone else, has escaped earthly judgment. And so, the mystery endures, a haunting reminder that some crimes never fully fade away. Before she became a cautionary tale, before her name was etched into the annals of true crime history, Ruth Marie Terry was simply a woman with dreams, a past, and people who loved her. Born in Tennessee, she was described by those who knew her as vibrant and kind-hearted, the type of person who left an impression wherever she went. Little is known about her early years, but by the time she crossed paths with Guy Moldavan, she had already lived a life full of experiences, some joyful, others undoubtedly painful. Her decision to place her son, Richard, up for adoption in 1958 could not have been an easy one. In that era, societal pressures and limited resources often forced women into impossible choices. Yet those who spoke of Ruth remembered her fondly, suggesting she carried warmth and resilience despite whatever hardships she faced. How, then, did she end up in the clutches of a man like Moldavan? What drew her to someone with such a dark history? Some speculate that Moldavan, ever the manipulator, preyed on her vulnerabilities. Others wonder if Ruth ever knew the truth about his past. What is certain is that by 1974, their paths had converged in a way that would end in tragedy. The marriage, if it even was legally binding, was short-lived. And then, Ruth vanished. From the moment her body was discovered, the case baffled investigators. Without fingerprints or dental records, identifying the Lady of the Dunes was nearly impossible in 1974. Early theories ranged from the plausible to the outlandish. Some detectives wondered if she was a victim of the mob, the removal of her hands, a classic signature of gangland killings. Others entertained the idea that she had been killed by a serial killer, perhaps even the infamous Whitey Bulger, who had ties to the area. One of the most persistent and bizarre theories linked her to the film Jaws, which was being filmed in Martha's Vineyard around the same time. Rumors swirled that she might have been an extra on set or even involved with someone in the production. Though intriguing, none of these leads panned out. For decades, the case languished. Then, as forensic technology advanced, new hope emerged. In the early 2000s, facial reconstruction gave the world its first glimpse of what the Lady of the Dunes may have looked like in life. Still, it wasn't until the advent of investigative genealogy that the final breakthrough came. When Richard Hanchett submitted his DNA to Ancestry.com. He had no idea he was about to become part of a historic cold case resolution. The genetic match to Ruth Terry's relatives was the missing piece investigators had been waiting for. In 2022, the FBI confirmed what had once seemed impossible. The Lady of the Dunes had a name. Yet, even with this revelation, the case remains frustratingly unresolved. Moldavan, the prime suspect, died in 1987, taking whatever secrets he knew to the grave. Did he act alone? Were there others involved? And why did he target Ruth? The identification of Ruth Terry was a monumental step forward, but many questions remain. Why were her hands removed so precisely? Was it to prevent identification, or was there a more symbolic reason? Why did the killer leave her on a beach blanket, almost as if staging the scene? And what was the significance of the pink toenail polish? A personal choice, or something more sinister? Some researchers have speculated that Moldavan may have had other victims. His ability to evade justice after the Seattle murders suggests he was cunning, perhaps even skilled at covering his tracks. Were there more bodies? More hidden crimes? Ruth Marie Terry's story is one of tragedy, resilience, and the enduring power of truth. For nearly 50 years, she was a mystery. Now she is remembered. Yet the person responsible for her horrific death has never faced accountability. The dunes of Provincetown still whisper in the wind, a silent witness to the evil that unfolded there. The Lady of the Dunes is no longer nameless, but her killer, whether Moldavan or another monster, remains in the shadows. And so, the case lingers, a chilling reminder that some mysteries never fully die. They simply wait, patiently, for the truth to rise from the sand.